The quiet power balance sheets. They rarely make headlines. They don't spark rallies or trigger panic on their own. Yet balance sheets quietly decide who survives stress, who gains influence, and who gets rescued when confidence disappears. This matters today because power in modern finance no longer sits only in markets or institutions. It sits in structure, in what is owned, what is owed, and how resilient those relationships remain when conditions change. Balance sheets shape outcomes long before prices react. To understand this power, we have to look beyond profit and focus on composition. A balance sheet is not just a snapshot of wealth. It is a map of dependency. It reveals who relies on short-term funding, who holds long-term obligations, and who can absorb loss without breaking. In calm periods, these distinctions feel abstract. Assets rise. Liabilities roll forward. Leverage looks efficient. Strong returns mask fragile structure. The system rewards growth, not durability. Balance sheets expand quietly in the background. But when pressure arrives, structure speaks louder than performance. Assets that looked valuable become hard to sell. Funding that felt stable becomes conditional. Obligations that seem manageable converge at once. In those moments, balance sheets stop being accounting tools. They become survival mechanisms. The reveal begins here. Power does not belong to those with the highest returns. It belongs to those with flexibility, those who can wait, those who can absorb shock without being forced to act. Balance sheets decide who negotiates and who must accept terms. Institutions understand this instinctively. They manage appearances publicly, but structure privately. Liquidity buffers, maturity profiles, hidden dependencies. These quiet choices shape resilience far more than quarterly results ever could. The early tension forms beneath the surface. Systems celebrate growth built on leverage, but rely on balance sheets built for stress. When the two diverge too far, confidence becomes fragile, because markets move on belief. But balance sheets determine what happens when belief runs out, and when pressure finally tests the system. It is not sentiment that decides outcomes. It is structure, quiet, patient, and unforgiving. As balance sheets expanded, their influence extended beyond individual institutions and into the system itself. Interconnections deepened. Assets became someone else's liability. Funding chains overlapped. What looked diversified on paper often relied on the same underlying assumptions. Institutions optimized for efficiency. Short-term funding lowered costs. Leverage boosted returns. Mismatches felt manageable because markets remained cooperative. Balance sheets grew larger, but also more synchronized. Similar structures responded similarly under stress. Markets reflected this alignment. Calm conditions rewarded leverage. Risk premiums compressed. Capital favored scale. The system appeared robust because everyone was winning together. But shared success masked shared vulnerability. This is where the reveal deepened. Balance sheets do not fail in isolation. When structures align too closely, pressure transmits quickly. A funding problem in one place becomes a liquidity problem elsewhere. Correlation rises not because assets are linked, but because balance sheets are. The early conflict sharpened as flexibility declined. Institutions relied on rolling obligations rather than settling them. Assets were held not for durability, but for yield. The system moved efficiently, but with little room for error. Participants sensed the risk, yet incentives discouraged caution. Strength was measured by expansion, not resilience. Balance sheets were judged by size, not by shock absorption. Quiet vulnerabilities accumulated behind visible growth. The emotional tension formed here. The system felt powerful, but brittle. Strong as long as conditions held. Fragile if alignment broke. Balance sheets were carrying more than value. They were carrying belief. And belief, when embedded structurally, amplifies both success and failure. The question ahead was no longer whether balance sheets mattered. It was how much risk they were silently holding for one another. The conflict reached its emotional peak when stress exposed how little separation truly existed. A disruption in one corner of the system triggered hesitation elsewhere. Funding tightened. Collateral was questioned. What seemed like isolated balance sheets revealed themselves as part of a single, interlocked structure. Institutions reacted almost simultaneously. Assets were marked down together. Obligations were defended at the same time. Liquidity was hoarded rather than shared. The system did not wait for collapse. It prepared for it, and preparation itself intensified pressure. This was the heart of the tension. Balance sheets that looked strong individually became fragile collectively. When everyone tried to protect themselves at once, protection turned into contraction. Safety became scarcity. Markets amplified this behavior instantly. Prices moved not on fundamentals, but on balance sheet logic. Who needed to sell? Who could wait? Who had access to funding? Value was redefined by urgency rather than worth. The emotional weight of this moment came from realization. The system had confused size with strength, expansion with resilience. Balance sheets had grown powerful, but not independent. Their power depended on conditions, remaining calm everywhere at once. As stress spread, hierarchy inverted. Institutions with modest returns but strong liquidity gained influence. Those with impressive assets but fragile funding lost leverage. Negotiation replaced growth as the primary skill. The buildup was complete. Balance sheets were no longer quiet background structures. They were active forces, deciding which institutions could shape outcomes and which ones had to accept them. The quiet power of balance sheets was finally visible, and once visible, it could not be ignored. The resolution did not come from shrinking balance sheets overnight. It came from rethinking what strength actually meant. The system began separating size from resilience and expansion from endurance. The climax arrived with a quiet shift in priorities. Institutions stopped optimizing only for return and started optimizing for survival under stress. Liquidity buffers were treated as strategy, not inefficiency. Maturity mismatches were reduced. Balance sheets were redesigned to absorb pressure instead of amplifying it. As these changes took hold, behavior adjusted. Power moved toward those who could wait, instead of those who needed to act. Negotiation replaced urgency. Optionality became more valuable than scale. The system relearned that influence flows from flexibility, not from volume alone. The resolution reshaped how risk was understood. Balance sheets were no longer passive records of past decisions. They were active expressions of future capability. What mattered was not just what an institution owned, but how long it could hold its position without being forced to move. Interconnections did not disappear, but they became more deliberate. Dependence was acknowledged rather than assumed away. Stress testing focused on behavior, not just numbers. The system became less synchronized and therefore less fragile. What endured was a defining lesson. Balance sheets are quiet sources of power because they decide outcomes when confidence fades. They determine who can choose and who must react. In moments of pressure, that distinction shapes everything. Markets speak loudly during calm. Balance sheets speak clearly during stress. And systems that listen to them early survive longer than those that chase growth alone. Subscribe to join the journey. The